Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Building AI Skills in Your Engineering Team webinar. Excited to have so many people joining us today. I see a bunch of people have said hello already. So if you're on the chat, you can see it there in StreamYard or wherever you're joining from. Feel free to say hello and don't forget to tell us where you're joining from. And maybe if you want to share what you do. And of course, as we go through this presentation, I always like it. You don't necessarily have to agree with everything I'm saying. So if you have a counterpoint, feel free feel free to bring it up there, or and we'll answer questions as we rummage along here because we have a lot of content to get through. And I will warn you, as Ali well knows, I speak fast, um, so that requires that you don't think slow. And let's just introduce ourselves real quickly. So I'm the founder of ODSC, and I'm also a venture partner, head of AI at Cortical Ventures. And yeah, a lot of experience doing this stuff originally as a quant finance, financial modeling, and then did a lot of consulting. And Ali, thanks for joining me. You want to introduce yourself?
Of course, sure. Thank you, Seamus, for joining us in this talk as well. Hi, everyone. My name is Ali, and I've been working as a data engineer for 4 to 5 years. And now I've been working with Seamus for 2 years. It's a great experience and a great honor to be working with him. And I've been working into the AI since I think the beginning of the start of everything when OpenAI released the first model of ChatGPT. And I've been using it and trying to tune it to our own in our own applications and our own use cases. So hopefully we'll find today's talk beneficial, and hope you're excited.
Yeah, and to add what Ali's saying there, myself, Ali, Sharif, Daniel, and a few others, we work on our Cortical Ventures project, and we're trying to use AI to find the next generation of AI startups because Cortical Ventures is an AI first startup. So if you're interested in doing a startup, or have an idea, or looking for funding, don't forget to hit me up on LinkedIn and that as well. But I do want to also point out the sponsors of this webinar are both Ra Labs as well as ODSC. So if you're already a skilled programmer or a skilled data scientist, LLM engineer, you definitely want to check out ODSC East. It's on May 13th to 15th. It'll be both in person here in Boston. I see there's a bunch of people joining us from Boston, so grab one of those Boston tickets, whether it's a free expo pass or something else. But love to have you join us at the convention center in Boston, down in the beautiful Seaport District. And then also, if you're brand new to AI and a lot of the stuff I'm telling you feels like nonsense, then join our boot camp because our next cohort starts April 1st, and we'll be looking at everything from data wrangling, introduction to programming, to large language model, LLM engineering, RAG, agentic AI. We'll be covering the whole remit. So look, let's get started with this here. So again, I see people join us from Finland, Boston, Cambridge, Brazil, Vancouver, one of my favorite towns. Been to Brazil as well for an ODSC, San Pablo. So great to see so many people join us from around the world. So let's go with the agenda here. So I assume, given the title of this, skills for engineers, a lot of you are using AI-assisted coding. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about that just to set the context, because a few things we want to say about that. Then we're going to get into, past trends are always somewhat an indication. They're no guarantee of future trends, as they say in financial markets. But we collect a lot of data, and we collected a lot of data around trends in 2024. So let's look at that data to help us understand what are the trends as we come into 2025. And then we'll take a look at the foundational skills in AI. If you want to consider yourself an AI expert, regardless, let's say you want to keep in your current role or you want to become an AI engineer or an LLM engineer, but what are the foundational skills in AI, whether you're doing that for fun or for profit or just for a hobby? And then we'll look at some data we have around in-demand skills, because I do not like kind of giving these webinars where we say, well, this is a skill and this is not a skill and this is in demand. It's not okay. Well, where's the data? Show me the money, as they say in the movies. So, and we'll look at top programming languages because people are always asking about that, because there's a lot of engineers out there. Um, Java, React, Python, R. Apologies, I'm not mentioning your favorite programming language. And then what does the job market tell us? Because a lot of over the last 10 years for a lot of projects I've done, when I want to look at trends and where should we place our bets, I look at job market trends. I look at job market descriptions. Job descriptions. There's a wealth of data in there. It's something we do from time to time, and we'll look at skills and platforms that are advertising these job descriptions for software engineers. And then, of course, we're going to look at a pretty hot job called the LLM engineer. There's not too many of these jobs around, despite the hype around it. But what we find is, a lot of people love having new titles like I want to be an AI engineer, an AI developer, LLM engineer. But what you mostly find is companies will advertise for, hey, I need a software engineer with certain skills. And when they advertise for a software engineer, they tend to copy and paste an old job description and say to the HR hiring manager, hey, hire me a software engineer, and they need to have the usual software engineering skills plus machine learning and AI and all that stuff. So what you tend to have is these copy and paste job descriptions, because at the end of the day, many of us are lazy. And so looking at a pure play job description like LLM engineer, even though there's not a lot of these around, will help inform us of what tools, platforms, and skills hiring managers are looking for in skills for their engineering team, right? And yeah, just another caveat here. I'm assuming that some people on this webinar are looking for a job. Some people want to upskill or reskill to becoming an AI engineer, something like that. But many of you are perfectly happy in your job and you just want to stay in your job, but learn new skills, leverage new skills, and hopefully get a nice pay raise boost on that. So that's my assumption here. So just because we're looking at job market data, job descriptions, doesn't mean that we're assuming that you're in the job market, stuff like that. It's just a good source of information, right? As we always say, we like data too. So we want to make data-driven decisions and data-driven statements. And then what's hot, a very hot trend in 2025. So I'm sure some of you are going to be working on AI agents and agentic workflows. By the way, we have a summit coming up on this in early July. And then I want to talk about prompt design, which you may find unusual. But I really believe prompt design is a core skill. I don't care if you're in marketing, sales, operations, legal, healthcare, and of course, software engineering and engineering. But prompt design is something you most likely, if you're on this webinar, you're most likely already doing. But do you really understand what you're doing when you're designing a prompt? And then more importantly, how do you build a systematic framework around this, right? So what is prompt engineering? When we talk about engineering, we're really talking about a structured, disciplined approach to tackling projects and problems. So I do differentiate between prompt design and prompt engineering. And then I'm going to do a demo. So rather, no, Ali's going to do a demo. And then we'll take final questions. All right. So I've got about 30 minutes to go through about 50 slides. I may not get to them all, but another question we always get is when will we get the slides? So either someone from ODSC or RAL Labs will be emailing out both the video of this as well as the slides. So you should get them tomorrow or a little bit later in the week. Assuming you want them, I hope you do. Fingers crossed. All right. So first thing I'm going to start with is AI assisted tools here. So this is a cursor. Here you can see that I did a little sentiment analysis project here. Let me see if you can kind of see this here. And what I'm doing is doing a chat here. And I'm basically asking it, what's great about these languages, a lot of them are using, just like you use ChatGPT, you can pick your model here. So for this one, I was using 3.5 Sonnet. Claude just came out, Anthropic just came out a couple of weeks ago with 3.7, which is what they call a hybrid reasoning model. It can both think fast and think slow. It can do reasoning as well as more quicker responses. It was first in the industry for that. You have Sonnet Thinking here. You have GPT-4.5 preview. And I'm pretty impressed with all these coding tools. And again, I'm not picking a favorite. Codium, Cursor, Colab I use a lot as well. But it's amazing how quickly they generate and pop these in here. So if you're still using ChatGPT and copy and pasting your code into your IDE, you're a little lost. You need to be using something like this. So PyCharm, Visual Studio, they all have that. Yeah, and by the way, Isa's asking, can you share the video? Yeah, video is open. Anyone can share the link. There's no paywall, sign wall. So just to set the context there, that's an idea. And for the most part, I'm going to assume that you guys are doing things like this because this is the bread and butter, right? Not hard to do. You just need to ask a question. And you can see here what I'm doing is I asked it, give me a code to scrape a movie review website, right? Just one line, pretty dumb prompt in my opinion. And then I ask it to give me, I can say here, create a UI, a better. It already did it in Gradio. See here, I got Gradio, the UI interface, but I don't like Gradio. I want to use Streamlist. I want to use Streamlit. And it's going to use Sonnet to go ahead and start building that. So while it's building that, let's talk about that. So we're all using those, like something like 70%. Who knows that these numbers are wrong, right or wrong, but it's up there, right? And then what's the primary code assistant tool? Definitely a lot of us are using ChatGPT. And again, we won't go into what we consider a better model. That could be something for a different thing. But remember, Cursor and all this stuff are probably using ChatGPT or a derived model or a distilled model or an open source behind that. So, and there's so many models coming out. You saw DeepSeek R1, you saw Quen, that was about a month ago. You saw the Quen model. Again, Anthropic is pushing super hard on these reasoning models and also these coding models. The Quen 32B model I just mentioned is very good for coding and math as well. So again, I think this is from Stack Overflow. It's a little bit outdated, but I think ChatGPT is so far ahead because number one, it does tend to be the leading model, and number two, it's what we're all used to using, right? You used to say in the old days, you don't get fired for buying IBM. You don't get fired for using ChatGPT. Again, lots and lots of models to choose from there.
Exactly. And there's one thing, Seamus, as well to add to that. Like
Yeah.
it's always good to mix and match between different stuff. So you can use ChatGPT if that's the one that you're comfortable with. You can as well try and verify the output that you're getting using any AI tool or any coding assistant as well to make sure that actually the result you're getting is the best result you can.
Yeah, exactly. Different tasks can require different models. Great point, Ali. And yeah, that's what I just showed here. And we find a lot of challenges. For example, when we're using these coding tools, at least when I started using them a year ago, they were very, very outdated in terms of APIs. You'd actually, and even quite recently, I haven't tried it so much with 3.7 Sonnet or GPT-4.5, but let's say you're a lot of the libraries we're using are newer AI framework libraries, and they tend to come out in the last 4 or 5 months. They were beyond the training cutoff time. So a lot of these coding models now can now search the web. So it's a good idea to prompt them by saying, either give it the latest version of the API, give it the latest version of the API, or ask it to specifically check in for the latest version of the API, which is different because if you ask it what's the latest version of the API it knows about, it might be an older one. So deprecated libraries are a big problem, especially with newer frameworks we found. And yeah, so a lot of people struggle with various things here. People worry about hallucination, security risks, and don't trust the outputs. I still think is a huge problem because hallucination used to be very, very obvious. Now it's not so obvious, and it becomes like a silent error. How do you know it? So again, we're all using these, and still challenges around here, no matter how good they are, because they get us 95% of the way, and then that 5% is difficult. So again, I'm going to skip over this pretty quickly because I assume you're kind of using this to a certain degree. So trends in 2025. For the ODSC community, which is about 300,000 globally, we asked, we had a pretty in-depth survey there, and we asked a bunch of questions. And no surprise, we found that many, many people, 84%, are using AI to explore and understand new concepts and ideas and to do coding, right? And what's very interesting, at least in this community, and again, I'm not assuming that, well, that you did the survey or you agree with this, but generally when we look at surveys from research houses, when you survey across the entire population of a given industry or country, whatever, you find that it's kind of a more or less 50-50 split between people who are enthusiastic about AI and people who are concerned about AI. You find that people who are very concerned about AI are people who don't actually use AI, but we have a very strong AI user community. And of those, I'm actually surprised. I thought this would be more like 70 already, but a lot of people believe AI will help them through their career. So I think if you're in this camp here, you're in good company. And again, looking back in 2024, I kind of viewed that as the AI's expansion year because if you think about 2023, ChatGPT 3 came out, 3.5, people got super excited about it. Lots of, let's build this, let's think about this. But 2024, last year, was really when people got a lot of money was invested in this through companies and startups, and we started to build stuff out. So you saw increased industry application. That's when code assistance really took off like a rocket. We also saw all the hype around agentic AI and autonomous agents. And now in 2025, we're definitely seeing, I don't know if you saw Maven from Chinese startup that came out built on Quen 32B model. And I think it's got some wrappers around, well, actually not, I think it's been proven that it's got some wrappers around Claude 3 or sorry, some version of Claude, not Claude 3. Kind of controversial, but again, we've seen Operator, we've seen lots of different agentic frameworks, and a lot of people working very, very hard on this. And then, of course, open source. We love open source, right? Because it is the best learning tool out there. You want to learn, I don't have to pay hundreds of dollars to OpenAI or Anthropic. I can learn what open source. I personally use Ollama, Ollama, to download if it'll fit in my laptop. Like I just downloaded the Quen 32B. I think it took about 14 gigabytes in my laptop. Not bad at all. And more importantly, it runs pretty quickly. So really fond of open source. Same with DeepSeek. And then multimodal AI is pretty big as well. So yeah, awesome. I see some of you guys are sharing links and stuff like that. Fantastic. Keep it up. But foundational skills, and I always love this definition of data scientists, and I actually believe in this. Having worked with data scientists, don't roll your eyes on this one, Ali or anyone else, but having worked with a lot of software, because most of my career has been spent working with software engineers or data scientists, and so data scientist is someone who's better at statistics than a software engineer and better at software engineering than a statistician, right? So flip that around, and you might have the separate different definition of a software engineer. Because a software engineer is definitely better at coding than a data scientist. So no offense to anybody, but I'm glad I coded first and then became a data science second. So what are the foundational skills you need for engineering team, right? So, I don't care what anyone says about low code. Well, I don't care what anyone says about no code. There's a place for that. That's great. I don't care what anyone says about tools like Codium. So it looks like it finished building this for me, wrote all that code for me. Do I need the code? Yeah, I still need the code because I understand what it's doing. So if people tell you there's going to be no coding jobs, there's going to be less coding, that's all nonsense. You should be in the future doing less coding, but you still need to understand code and how to read code. So programming, I don't know, for the next 5 or 10 years is still an essential skill. I have yet to be convinced otherwise, even though myself, my team, we all use those coding tools. And as a relation to that, if you want to do anything in statistics, probability, or AI, or large language models, you do, like anything else, you don't have to be an expert in building them. You don't have to build your own LLM model or even fine tune it. But you do have to understand how it works. So when we say, large language models is basically next token prediction. Well, what does that mean? If someone asks you to build an AI platform or system, and all of a sudden you're doing testing and evaluation, how do you know how to evaluate those models? Do you understand what a P1 score is, an F1 score is? Do you understand, various mechanisms for evaluating and assessing the results of AI, right? So to do that, you have to have a little bit of foundation in statistics and probability. Not a lot, but something to I would say 20 to 30 hours of understanding is kind of key. And then next, of course, machine learning and large language modeling. we'll show you later, but we see a lot of job descriptions with machine learning and LLM modeling advertised for those. And then data wrangling, because having worked with a lot of data engineers, like you might be a front end data engineer, you might focus on the UI UX, you might focus on different languages, and then the whole back end is somebody else specialized in that. In AI, you can't really skip that part. Garbage in, garbage out. If you don't understand the data, you're not going to understand how well the model is working, right? So I find like a lot of software engineers, they skip over the data part. Oh yeah, I know what data is. Well, you almost need to know to the level that a data analyst would, right? So understanding all that stuff, and then prompt engineering, as I said before, I believe this is the superpower coming into 2025. We'll talk more about that, and then I just had a podcast with training the next. How do universities build in this age of agentic AI and AI agents, and that is having solid problem solving and analytic skills. And this is what companies have been hiring for the last many decades. All right, so we collected a bunch of data in 2024. We looked at ML engineer, LM engineer, and remember, job descriptions, they reflect past job needs. So job descriptions are always what we call a lagging indicator. And also, we find for very recent skills and stuff like that, there's always a hidden requirement for a job. Do you ever go to a job interview and they start asking you about things that would never mention in the job description? So that's just caveat in this data we think we collected. And then many job postings are recycled, right? They just copy and paste them. So with that, you can see here, we of those thousands of jobs you scrape, you can see for data scientists here, it's very data science heavy, analytics, AI, algorithms. And then look at here for machine learning and prompt engineering. So I know this talk is mostly for software engineers, and we'll look at that in more detail. But you can see here, if you want to be a software engineer who can work on AI and machine learning, you kind of need to have a good, as mentioned, what are they looking for? They're looking for deep learning. They're looking for NLP, MLOps, some statistics as mentioned, data engineering. And then from prompt engineering, which I said is a very hot skill, not so much a job, but a hot skill, generative AI, prompt engineering, machine learning. But what's nice here, you can look across this cloud, ops, data engineering. Some of these skills you already have. So if you're coming to this from a program first background or from a code first or software engineering first, you already have a lot of these skills, right? And again, these are just how do we build this? We did topic modeling, and we just used NLP and some topic modeling with ADA and ChatGPT to kind of like rise up the most important topics and pull out all those filler words. So again, we're not necessarily saying like I wouldn't use this as ground truth, and I would say this is an indication of interest more than an absolute interest. So it's but within a range that we find it pretty accurate. And then those are the skills and the tools. Again, you may be familiar with some of these like Excel, but in AI and data science, it's still TensorFlow, it's still PyTorch, because you may think it's all about ChatGPT and Anthropic. It's not, right? You go into a company, they're still doing traditional machine learning, because traditional machine learning can give you more absolute results. There's no hallucination problems. They're more transparent. So when they're building a system to do mortgage approvals, credit card approvals, healthcare diagnostics, they're using something that's more transparent, more reliable, traditional machine learning, and that's what you see here. So if you're not familiar with some of these skills, we can get into them in a little later, but Hugging Face is a great resource on LangChain, Llama, and stuff like that. So here are some of the platforms that are in demand by role, but notice I'm not mentioning software engineering yet, which I will in a second. So again, we'll give you this in the slides and you can kind of study this in your own thing here. So what are the top programming languages? I hate to tell you, if you don't see your favorite language on here, like Go or what's the other one I like? I really like Julia. It's a great language. The winner for programming languages is definitely Python, right? For data science and AI. Lots of different reasons for that I won't get into, but if you're serious about data science and AI, if you're a Python programmer, excellent, you are off ahead. If you're doing something else like Java, sure, there's machine learning platforms and deep learning and all, and Java for J for deep learning and all that stuff. But really, my advice to you is learn Python, and there's nothing wrong with that. With code assisted tools these days, pretty easy to learn a language, pretty easy to code in it. I myself usually code in Python, and I used to be very strong in Java. I don't use it anymore. I love R, still use R, C, a little CUDA, which is not even on here. But for AI machine learning, you just got to use Python. It's not debatable. Um, and you can see here, this is just a graph for language choice for data science. SQL's in here because in AI machine learning, we need to access the data, and we really want to pull that in here. So, job market trends. Definitely, we're seeing in 2024, large language models were getting more complex. Prompt engineering is coming to the fro. You may have heard of RAG systems. They're basically search systems. Some use vector embedding, some don't. I just did a podcast with Sid Posen from Squirrel AI. If you're interested in RAG and AI search, and then of course Agent Framework, we have Crew AI, we've LangChain, Llama Index, and then multimodal integration. If you go and work on online enterprises right now, people are like, "Oh, what's the use case for multimodal?" Image search. When you're trying to do, if someone likes a coat, well, or a jacket, how do I serve them up another image that's similar products? Because they tend to like. You just saw they looked at 4 different products because I was actually helping a startup do this and build a better recommendation engine. I noticed that you could tell by when people are looking at clothes, for example, you can tell their favorite color pretty quickly because they looked at a blue pair of pants, a blue jacket, and all that stuff. So make a recommendation, probably want to recommend blue, right? So multimodal around text, imaging, and understanding is doing that, and then the podcast is I'll just put it here. ODSC podcasts, ODSC one podcast, yeah, it's right there, and yeah, human AI collaboration, workflow reliability. So that's what we saw last year, and what's interesting is, so again, another caveat: I'm not expecting you guys to become machine learning engineers, blah 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 blah. But to me, when software engineers ask me what should I learn, I say again, look at the job descriptions and what people are looking for these different roles. And you can see that machine learning engineer is still the main one in demand, and but you see these roles of AI engineer, which is very close to what I call an AI developer, and see prompt engineering is kind of creeping up there, LM engineer and all that stuff again. So just for setting context here. And you can see that prompt engineering. So a lot of people, including myself, used to think this is a bit of a joke role, and I really got stand corrected. Once I realized how much prompt engineering, yeah, Ali's laughing at me because I bring hammering the team very hard about prompt engineering the last few months. But I did, like, when there was 2.5 years ago, there was a viral article of how someone was advertising for a prompt engineer for $300,000. I'm like, just type something in the chat GPT, you're a prompt engineer. I'm like, no, it's a lot more complex than that. But 2,000 jobs, I believe this in the USA is not a lot of jobs. And even doubling more than 120% growth, is that it? 120% growth? Still a lot. But again, it's really good to look at these job descriptions to see what skills, and that's what we did. We mined those job descriptions to do that. So what Ali and Daniel helped me on, we I think it was 15,000 job descriptions from 2024.
I think more than, yeah, I think around that number or even more.
Yeah, so we pulled in, because what we do is we run these again, when you scrape data, just be careful how you do it, but we abide by all the recommendations, and we collect these job descriptions every time, right, on the time, and we remove duplicates. But again, so what we did was so for software engineers, so we looked for software engineering jobs that had some mention of something like machine learning or AI, right? Because there's something like I don't know, there's 100,000 software engineer jobs available. So we only looked at those. So first of all, we had to filter through them. And because we were looking for jobs with AI and machine learning, of course, machine learning was going to be the most one. So you can see there was about 11,000 mentions of this and the 13 or 14,000 job descriptions we posted. And remember earlier, you might have been kind of been skeptical when I said Python is the most important language in data science and AI. Because again, we don't scrape Python software engineering jobs. We just scrape software engineering and software development and programming jobs, and Python like poof. So um, um, sorry, yeah, guys, don't spam. Um, we give great talks. You want to get invited back. Um, so you can see your AI is one, and then NLP, data science. So these are jobs. These I consider some of the most important jobs if you're a software engineer. So learn some deep learning. You definitely want to learn large language models, but I think this has become more important. Remember, we said job descriptions are lagging, and we scraped these over the entirety of 2024. It would have been interesting for us if we looked at these in maybe the last quarter of 2024, the first few months of 2025. We haven't done that yet. And it's interesting that generative AI is pretty low down here because generative AI is usually a term you'd use for creative industries. And see, prompt engineering, my favorite new skill here is kind of like very low, and reinforcement learning, which is very, very hot right now in reasoning models. Um, so um, yeah, I asked Martila for a few links. I didn't ask for 15, but but thank you. I appreciate your help in educating us. Thanks for sharing. So see here, generative AI. So don't take this verbatim. So I believe some of these skills, even though I have a low count here, are very, very important, right?
Mm.
But the general idea here is that LLM, deep learning, machine learning, AI skills, MLOps are important. Ali, do you want to add something there?
Yeah, I was gonna say still like keep in mind that was for software engineers job postings. Like you're expecting to see these kind of like low skills, like they have the low count and more in AI jobs, machine learning and stuff related to mainly to core ML. But it's very interesting, as you said, Seamus, to start seeing these rising in different job postings, like software engineering. Maybe you'll see it in other job posting as well, like front end or back end developers, like having the core understanding of prompt engineering or how to use an LLM to basically to carry out the job faster and make more consistent.
Exactly. Then we looked at platforms. And again, I was kind of surprised to see this because we thought we'd see a lot more like Copilot and stuff like that. But again, top of the list was TensorFlow and PyTorch. I don't quite understand that. It may be that, well, well, I, well, I do understand a little because we also talked to a lot of team leads and heads, head of data science, head of AI, head of engineering, and companies that are doing AI and machine learning for the last couple of years. They already have a very large TensorFlow and PyTorch infrastructure, right? So if you're going to be doing software engineering within that context, you may need how to interact with these platforms, right? So of course, OpenAI and ChatGPT are there. Scikit-learn is an open source platform. Well, so is TensorFlow and PyTorch, but one of my favorites, especially for traditional machine learning, doing random forest, XGBoost, and stuff like that. Um, we see frameworks like LangChain, Llama Index. They're rising because for RAG, for agentic AI, for a lot of these engineering tasks. These are pretty popular frameworks. I just be careful about using those because the definition of a framework is something that can get you. It can help you it can get you there quickly. It can get you. It can help you arrive very quickly, but then it'll slow you down. Right. I guess what I'm saying, it'll get you 80% of the way there. But then the last 20% will be very hard, and sometimes that 20% will be impossible because you're using a LangChain framework. So we've moved away from using those because they're very, very heavy, and sometimes especially with agentic AI, and those of us used to working building pipelines and workflows. So again, just because it's here doesn't mean just doesn't mean you should use it. But again, we're talking about skills that are hiring, and you can see Anthropic and Claude, and then Google has a lot of platforms as well, which is like Vertex, Google Vertex AI, which is their platform. Microsoft Azure didn't make the top one here, but I'm sure if you're a Microsoft shop or an Amazon shop, you're using those tools as well. So again, not to say that they're not popular. Interesting to see Pinecone here because Pinecone is one of many, many vector databases. So if you have a bunch of text or something like that, you usually convert the text into what we call embeddings, which are mathematical representations of your text. And then you can do things like similarity search using distant metrics like cosine distance or Euclidean distance to figure out how two terms like are away from each other. So when you do recommendations, stuff like that. So these are some of the platforms that got surfaced. All right, and I'll let you view that at your leisure. And then, I was a little disappointed with this because I thought we get more stuff here. So I'm like, so what we did instead was like, okay, let's look at the role of LLM engineer, right? Sorry, let me answer that question here. So Lawrence asked, what does it mean to have Anthropic as a skill, right? So what we did here was these are skills, right? So Python is an open source thing. That's a kind of a skill. Machine learning is a skill. These are platforms, right? So prompt engineering is a skill, but sometimes you need to have a skill within a certain platform, right? So we use this just to figure out what are some of the platforms people are using. So we're not saying Anthropic is a skill per se. We're saying that these are some of the platforms that we see advertised in software engineering jobs, right? So that's what we mean by that. If I think I answered that, and yeah, so definitely, like we use Perplexity API. We use the team uses OpenAI's API a lot. I also use like Olama. I use Claude, and I use a few other ones as well. So yeah, so there is some skill there. A lot of those skills are interchangeable, but some of them are not so much. So yeah. So sorry, that's what we mean by skill versus platform. So again, I thought more jobs by now would surface stuff like that. So as a proxy for that, we said, okay, well, if I wanted to hire a software engineer to help me in my LLM projects, I could probably hire someone who has. I would look for LLM job descriptions. So we looked at LLM engineering. I can see here this gave us a much better view of what skills I would need for that software engineer. So you can see top one here skill is large language models, engineering, generative AI, data science, research. So again, study this here, but you can see RAG, data pipelines, computer vision. So these are some of the skills in LLM engineering. And again, don't despair. You do not have to learn all of those, but it's kind of proof of what we're talking about, like mathematics and statistics. You need some skill in those. If you already have software engineering and programming, you're away to races. I don't know what the difference is between these two. Same thing to me. Software. Well, yeah, engineering is different from programming. There's engineering is a higher level skill. We can see that knowing computer science, NLP, machine learning, and LLM is by far the most important things, and data pipelines. And then in terms of platforms, again, Python, TensorFlow, Hugging Face is a great platform. If you've never looked at Hugging Face for data science and AI, check it out. They have lots of great data sets, resources, and then Spacey's kind of for scraping and NLP. AWS SageMaker, OpenAI, Pandas is kind of like a data science bread and butter, as is NLTK. This is for NLP, and see Snowflake for data and Llama Index. So again, this is more of a hint for you. Like in the future, if you're looking for like what skills as a software engineer should I have, want to do machine learning, look at job descriptions for LLM engineer, right? And then yeah, languages again, it's all Python, right? C a little bit because they want to speed up their pipelines. All right, so I'm not going to spend because I need to give time to Ali to do this, but agentic AI is very, very hot at the moment. There's a lot of coding involved, so we're seeing increased demands for software engineers that are doing agentic AI. Lots of reasons for doing that: personal assistance, research, and all that kind of stuff. This is what it looks like. You have some kind of prompting going into an LLM, you get a response. Usually have some kind of memory store, such as a vector store and RAG. And then you have this agentic workflow doing tasks. It might be out there scraping the web using API calls. But again, if you're interested in this, we do have our, and you're not familiar with it, we do have our bootcamp starting April 1st. You'll learn more about agentic workflow. And these are some of the components we're seeing around agentic AI. So, and by the way, agentic AI doesn't just have to be software. It could be robotics is a big thing. We're looking at cortical. And Ali and I and the team have talked a lot about this because when you're doing this workflow, memory management is a huge, not traditional programming memory management, but how do you have system memory? How do you have long-term memory, intermediate memory? How can it, so memory is a big part of this. And then reasoning and decision making is huge. So you've seen in the last couple of weeks from Quen, from OpenAI, from Gemini, from Anthropic, their new latest version of Claude, reasoning and decision making. That's why that's so hot, because you cannot have agentic AI without reasoning decision making. And then another thing we're looking at is called headless browser. So we're using all these tools. Well, let's say we want to go out and grab some data from the web ourselves. We're looking at tools like Firecrawl AI and browser based. Some great tools here. What they do is they strip away all that HTML metadata and just give you it helps make web pages ready for LLM and prompt engineering. And then, of course, learning and reasoning. And yeah, so good. So let me answer a few questions here. Yeah, so first one, cybersecurity. Um, I was actually just looking at a conference in DC around cybersecurity and AI. So first of all, um, I won't pretend to know too much about cybersecurity. I used to be a CSO, but I haven't been doing security stuff in the last 4 or 5 years. But I would say if you think about threat prevention, threat detection, I think prompt engineering is again a very important skill there, because you have to, like, so for example, you understand prompt prevent sorry threat threat prevention and threat detection. What would be the prompts you would put into something like a cybersecurity agent do with that? And with cybersecurity, you're usually working with stuff like logs and paths. You're looking for abnormal users, so anomaly detection is a big thing in machine learning.
Going through as well, like mitigating the threats related to phishing and social engineering when it comes to like the messages,
Yeah,
scanning emails, stuff like that. And LLM would be a really good application here to mitigate those. Um,
yeah, exactly. Dali's saying is like, think about all the stuff that's where it's aberration. Like if the log files look different, if the amount of time someone's logging on looking different, they got a different workflow, bit that flow. That stuff is very, very hard to build hard code rules about. Machine learning is very good at machine learning is very good at anomaly detection. It's a whole section of machine learning, and then LLMs are very, very good at looking for because they're pattern recognition machines, right? And usually, threat detection is a variation from a different given pattern. And then you can imagine what how agentic AI would be very, very useful in very, very useful in cybersecurity, because when we think about building agents can be running 24/7, multiple steps, so it can be constantly looking for threats, constantly looking for actions. Like you could actually say to an agent, if like if it's a high security threat, shut down access while we verify this threat, right? An agent could do this. This is what a human operator could. Another question is, let's see here. Okay, podcasts. Maybe I'll get back to that one later. Yeah, line chain losing position. Pydantic AI. Yeah, who knows? Flavor of the month. Line chain when it came out was pretty buggy. We moved to Llama Index. Then they came out with new stuff. So I wouldn't knock any framework or tool, because it all depends on your use case. It all depends on your appetite. Sometimes the latest Chinese things. So because you know, it's very, very hard to build a silver bullet. And I wouldn't want to say, well, this one's good and this one's bad, because there's so many caveats around that. Um, so again, understand your use case, understand the API documentation, because even though that's another tool trick as well, don't let ChatGPT tell you what a good tool is. Just read the API documentation yourself.
Because if you don't do that, you're gonna learn that the hard way, to be honest. If you're actually building a product and this is the way you figure things out, that's gonna be the hard way.
Exactly.
I think we have.
Yeah. Sorry, there's something about agents here. Yeah. So Python, just learn Python on that one here, and then there was something around AI agents, which I thought was popular. Yeah, Jemson. Sorry. Oh, editing agents. Yeah, there's tons of agents. So small agents, SMOL agents from Hugging Face is a very lightweight framework that's getting popularity. Crew AI has got some good ones there as well. And then, as we just mentioned, LangChain and Llama Index have agentic stuff worked in. Ali, any other agent frameworks?
I think yeah, that's that you can utilize other stuff like using if you're wanting to like see coding assistance, you can just go to Cursor with some of the Sonnet or GPT 4.0 if that's what you're asking about. But for the agents, I think as you mentioned, Seamus, these are the main ones.
Yeah, exactly. Let me move on here before we run out of time. And so, as I mentioned, I give a more in-depth talk on AI agent components. And this is a slide from our AI agents from our boot camp. But again, what's very important in agents is apart from this interface here, it's this memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, system memory, procedural memory, and then reasoning models, which we saw a big release on those, and then the automation layer. Think about using, sorry, our usual DAG execution frameworks, but you got to schedule stuff, you got to automate it. What about if an event happens, trigger that in task execution? So this automation layer should be a lot familiar to a lot of engineers, but this is why you can see that having good software engineering skills is important in this layer here, and then the tools and communication layer, which we'll talk about another time. And then because I want to get to prompt design because this is Ali's going to showcase to us. So I kind of separate prompt design. So prompting is about creating well-crafted prompts. So as you saw here, where I prompted this thing here, this is a pretty poor prompt, right? So I'm just saying, give me code to scrape a movie review website. That's an example of a very, very poor prompt design because it's not clear or concise. Well, it is very concise, too concise. I didn't give it any relevant content. Well, I gave it a little relevant. I said a movie website. Great. Um, so one of the things I was telling the team about a couple of months ago, but if you want to write a good prompt, you should prompt ChatGPT or Anthropic to write the prompt for you, right? So I would tell it, give it a very complicated prompt and say, help me build a movie website. Here are the things we'll need. And then when you code with that, use that prompt, it's very, very clear. But that's an idea of prompt design, right? Let's see, here we got it's what we call priming. So without priming, you say, like, what are some good exercises? This is actually, I believe this example is from OpenAI, actually. And with priming, give a context. Well, what a good exercise. Well, are you a beginner? Are you a seasoned exerciser? And I want them to be low impact because I'm older or whatever. I'm just starting. What would you recommend? Right. So this is priming. This is with priming. But the challenge with prompting is if you're an engineer, you're going to get inconsistent results. No one likes those. Your boss not going to like that. There's no systematic methodology. Difficult to scale. So if I'm just writing prompts here, like how am I supposed to scale this? Lack of understanding and big problem. Like if I write this prompt one day, if I ask it to give me a movie review website, let's say I went from 3.5 son to 3.7, am I going to get the same code? Is the code going to be better or worse? I assume it's going to be better, but not necessarily, right? So the new skill, which is very big in 2025, is prompt engineering, right? And the goal here is to go beyond just crafting good prompts. We want to structure optimized. Because remember, and we just had this discussion this morning with the team, like we're generating too many tokens in our prompts. That's costly. It takes time, it takes up storage, and also we're getting charged by the token, right? So we want to have a systematic approach to prompt engineering, and that's pretty important for us. So, and where do we use prompt engineering? We use it in LLMs when we're building LLMs. We're building those RAG systems, vector databases. These agent frameworks, they all need prompt engineering, multimodal AI integration. So, again, my recommendation is understand the difference between prompt design and prompt engineering. Prompt design is you typing something in the ChatGPT or Anthropic and doing a good job of that. Prompt engineering is a systematic approach to it, like Ali's going to show. But if you want to do any of this stuff here, learn prompt engineering or improve your skills in that because that will help you do all of this stuff here. Domain specialization is very important in prompt engineering because our prompt domain that we're focusing outside of ODSC is in the domain of venture capital investment. So we have to know that industry very, very well in order to prompt the systems for answers around venture capital and startup investment. And yeah, so I almost compare it to other skills like Excel, like it's going to become a universal skill. A lot of companies are hiring for it, and it's evolving. And then prompting engineering has been around for a while, like a couple of years. So the first thing you saw, which Ali will show you, is what we call a prompt template. We kind of fill in the blanks. It's most of the code is filled in, and it might be in brackets a keyword. So you want to say there might be a prompt template for I'm a fill in the blank, and I want to have an exercise set for the next 3 weeks to lose X number of pounds. So I could say I'm a beginner and I want to lose 30 pounds, or I've been exercising for I'm advanced at exercising and I want to lose 10 pounds. You know what I mean? So that's a template. Chain of thought is very very big. When when OpenAI released their O1 model, you used to have to prompt GPT-4 to do chain of thought. You would say, "Oh, break it down by chain of thought," but O1 actually built chain of thought into it, so you no longer ask it. But that actually makes it difficult to do other types of reasoning, such as tree of thought reasoning or critical reasoning or something like that. And then you have this example of single or few shots. So a lot of these models now don't even need a single shot. Shot just means example. So with a 4.5 Claude Sonnet 3.7, you don't give examples, but sometimes you need to give examples. So, for example, when we're looking for a research paper, we'll give it a prompt of here's a research paper we liked in robotics. Here's why we liked it. That's one example, or maybe two examples, right? And a very, very important one is consistency, right? Because when we're doing prompting, we want consistent results. We want to have a consistent prompt. So that's why we make it systematic and bring an engineering discipline around it, right? And then because it's an engineering discipline, a lot of people kind of ignore certain rules of engineering. You want to modularize your prompts. You don't want to have one just massive long script. You've got to create reusable prompt templates, version control. People don't believe this, but look at all these different models. And this one came out 2 weeks ago. This one came out last week, or this one came out 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. This one came out 4 weeks ago. Like none of these models were here 6 months ago, right? Like,
Exactly.
and if you use these models to write code 6 months ago, and all of a sudden you bring in a new model, what's going to happen to your code base, right? Versioning, we do data versioning, model versioning. You do it in your software. Version control, I don't see anyone in prompt engineering doing version control. It's very, very important. Automated testing, you want to validate your prompts. So we're starting to validate our prompts, like to make sure when we write a prompt and get the result, it's the same result we expected, right? And then optimization efficiency is very, very important. A lot of the prompt engines right now, a lot of the LLM engines right now, they're telling you what's the token limit you want or how much time you want to spend on this, right? So understanding how the mechanics of this, like OpenAI and Anthropic, are both doing this, because you don't want to have a big bill at the end of the month, right? Yeah, so maybe Ali, in the interest of time, let's switch to your demo. So,
Okay. Thank you, Seamus.
and I can answer this question while you're. Yeah,
Okay.
actually, I do. Sorry, I'll answer that question, Ali, while you share your screen. Um, yeah, difficult answer question me to answer because we've grappled with this a lot. So sometimes let's say I'm using GPT-4o, right? Within GPT-4o, there were actually version changes, right? So let's say OpenAI decided to change some procedure or some what do they call it protocol within their model, and they changed a small version number release. They might not tell you, but it'll actually have an effect on your prompt. So that's why having version control and validating your prompt, and just like unit testing, you run the prompt again and again so that the result doesn't change. Because how are you to know? So it's not just about going from like GPT 4.0 to 4.5. The versions within that, because they're always releasing new versions every week almost, and then sometimes you don't have a choice. You get the new version, and yeah, let's say there's a policy change. Like they're always changing the policy of what they allow on ChatGPT and not. And then suddenly, when they loosen the policy, your prompt changes and becomes a little more risque, or they tighten the policy, and the result you had was absolutely fine. All of a sudden, it won't respond to it. Like there was an example in the UK, Virgin Media, Virgin Airlines, famous company in the UK, Virgin Media, Virgin Airlines. There's also a thing called Virgin Bank, and they built a chat bot for Virgin Bank. And it kept on saying, the person said, "Can you tell me how much money is in my Virgin Bank account?" And ChatGPT say, "No, that's an inappropriate question. We don't answer questions like that." I'm like, right? So yeah, so policy changes. So yes, it can be very subtle, but it can really mess up, if, especially if you've got something in production. And this is why one of the reasons why a lot of companies don't trust to deploy these to production, especially in regulated industries. But sorry, I will let Ali go ahead.
No, that's interesting, and this is one of the stuff that why prompt engineering or trying to design your prompts and try and make them at least consistent is very, very important if you're trying to build a product around LLMs. This is one of the very important things that if you're building a product around any of the AI available models, whether it's ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude, even DeepSeek, you need to make sure that you're actually having consistent results. You can deploy something to production and have users or clients using it and have inconsistent or wrong results every time they use your product, which is why, like as Seamus said, prompt engineering, prompt design need to be like looked into to make sure that you're actually providing a good product that is consistent. So as Seamus mentioned, what is prompt engineering and why is it important to improve quality, consistency, save time and resources. You want to do some customizations, you want to do RAG systems. So prompting is going to be one of the um, really, really important keys to the success of your product. So based on what Seamus as well mentioned in the presentation is what are the best practices for prompt engineering. So if you're using ChatGPT, if you're using DeepSeek and you're asking questions related to maybe can you summarize a text for me? Can you explain a concept? Most of the time, whatever you write or the questions you write don't actually matter to do that much of a prompting into it unless you're intending to get a very specific result out of it. So, for an example, if we are going to go here, I'm just assuming this is some sort of like this is the imports that will need to run this code. But for an example, if I want to do and explain a bubble sort in 2 sentences with an example. Like if a student is trying to understand what a bubble sort is and he's just trying to get an answer, this would be a really, really good example and something that most of the people would be writing into ChatGPT or DeepSeek or whatever they're using. It's going to give you an answer, it's going to provide some examples, and that's it. So you're giving it instruction, asking, okay, explain this to me, provide an example, and it's a good enough prompt or it's a good enough question. Some other examples or best practices when you're writing your prompts as well is to try and provide a context what you're writing, which will elevate the output and elevate the instructions or the results you're getting from your LLM in a really, really good way. So for an example, here you're setting the context that the LLM or the system is a helpful and informative tour guide in Paris. So you're setting the context. He's a tour guide. He's in Paris, so he should be able to provide some instructions or some recommendations based on that. And you're a tourist, and you're asking what some must-see attractions in Paris, and you're just asking provide details, including information about Eiffel Tower, Louvre, and Arc de Triomphe. That's it. You didn't ask about anything else. If we see here, based on setting the context, that the LLM is a helpful, informative tour guide, you will find that it gives you details about the Eiffel Tower. It gives you tips for visiting without asking. It gives you tickets to avoid long waits, purchasing them online or in advance, best time to visit, dining options. It did the same for the Louvre Museum. It did the same for the Arc de France. So it provided some really good results without you even explicitly asking them. But again, relying on this alone, especially if you're going to provide more data, as we're going to see down in the code, it's going to be very hard to get in consistent results that can be used in something else. So if I'm gonna go to one of the examples that we have, for example here, if you are gonna provide an input text to your LLM and you're asking like, this is text talking about quantum computing, advantages, building and maintaining them, scaling, developing, and you wanna get a summary about this text. So this is a good example as well. It's gonna give you a summary and that's it. But let me just see if there's a question. Okay, it's just. But if we go down there using some priming and setting context, but for maybe some sort of a large prompt with more data, like, let me see, like, yeah, this one. So here we want to look into some sort of a prompt, a report generation for, let's say, cortical stakeholders. They want to look at maybe what are the most trending or the current trending papers on Hugging Face, for an example. And we have this type of data. We have the title, the summary, the votes, repos, if there is any, and the authors of these papers and their affiliation and the published date of the paper. If we want to do and build like a custom tailored report that would be available and ready to use and maybe sent in an email, there is different ways to do this. You can just ask a general question like you are provided with the JSON string containing information about 10 research papers from Hugging Face. So here you're explaining what data is provided, and then you're providing the data to the LLM inside the prompt, and then you're asking just provide details about each paper. If we see this example, what you're going to see is it's basically telling you the contents of the JSON that you just passed to the LLM. So it's going to tell you the title of the paper, the ID, a summary, which is basically what was written in the JSON as well, the authors and their affiliation of both, and publishing date. But if we try and give it more context into what we are looking for, what we're interested in, like for each paper, please extract and present the following information. We want to look for title, the authors, publication, likes, and want a summary, but want a summary in a specific format, like 3 bullet points. And we're looking as well for a conclusion about the papers and the results. And maybe we're interested to know more about the industry and business relevance, and we're giving it some key insights as well that we're looking for, like what is the potential applications of this paper, maybe list the industries or sectors that are working in the same research field, if there's like an existing implementation or a patent for it, or it can be commercialized. So if we give this prompt using our data, the same data that we give before, we're gonna find a completely different result down here. So you have, again, the title, the authors, that's good, publication date, the likes, and you see starts giving you a summary on 3 bullet points as it was instructed. You're gonna try and see conclusion based on the paper and the paper data, and you're gonna start and seeing some insights based on the industry relevance, potential application, and stuff like that. The key here is to try and make it consistent, make it reliable, and basically give it as much information as it needed so that you'll have, at the end of the day, consistent results. Let me take a couple of. Yeah, we're gonna definitely provide the link for this notebook plus the slides. And yeah, one more thing as well, as Seamus was mentioning, we had a couple of we had some issues when we're trying to make sure that our data that's output of the LLM, whether it's OpenAI, DeepSeek, or Claude or Perplexity even, is consistent and is relevant to what we're asking about. Because most of the time, if you provide data, if you provide even a good, concise and structured prompt, you're still gonna find hallucinations even if the data is available. Like trying to build something like this based on passing data and providing a very specific details about how you want to structure your data, you can find sometimes that related to the authors is going to say it's not found. You can check the data, you're going to find that the authors were actually available there. So making sure that you actually test your prompts against a predefined data set and make sure that, yep, they pass a specific threshold, they're good enough to now roll into production. I think this is one of the really important aspects, because at the end of the day, you want to ship these stuff into production and into products. So if they are inconsistent or not good enough, I don't think that's the result we're wanting. Let me check the answers. Okay. So one question would be how to build custom tailor solution and when to leverage agentic AI. Okay, so one, I'm gonna talk about or based on an experience of mine. So in an example, if you're trying to do some data extraction or web scraping, and you're wanting to have make sure actually your workflow is consistent and it's scalable, even if the pages change, and you want it to be dynamic and adaptive enough that you don't have to worry about workflow breaking down each and every time somebody changes the web page that you're trying to get the data from. And we're totally talking about like ethical web scraping. So one of the stuff that you can do is actually try and scrape the data or get the HTML of the page and try to feed that to an LLM, and it would be dynamic enough to still fetch the data that you want without too much parsing or without hard coding the keys and the values that you're looking for. So you can basically, I'm gonna see if there is an example here. Unfortunately not, but I can definitely add one example for you guys when you have the notebook. But scraping data, or as Seamus mentioned, having headless scrapers is good. I think we're running out of time, so we'll make sure to provide the notebook. If you guys have any questions, please make sure to leave them in the comments. We're gonna make sure to do like an article trying to answer your questions, and that's it. Thank you all, and bye.